really getting into some fascinating source material. We're looking at what we're calling narrative psychosis. It's all about how fictional stories, use clinical ideas like delusion and hallucination to build these really compelling alternate realities for the audience. And our mission today, it's pretty specific. We're going to use clinical definitions, philosophical ideas, even plot lines from American Dad, believe it or not. And we're going to use all that to tackle this really radical hypothetical twist for a classic horror movie. The big question, what if the killers in the original Scream, Billy and Stu, what if they weren't real? What if they were just an elaborate delusion cooked up by Sidney Prescott?
That's a really interesting frame for this because, if you want to understand how a narrative can pull off that kind of psychological twist, the audience really needs the right tools. The key to unlocking these breaks from reality, whether it's Sidney or, like you said, Stan Smith, it really hinges on understanding the difference between the two main symptoms of psychosis. We absolutely have to separate a delusion that's a fixed, false belief, it's cognitive, from a hallucination, which is all about false perception. It's sensory. One's what you think, the other's what you experience.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like we need to build that clinical foundation first, really nail down those definitions. Because without getting that difference clear, that whole Scream idea, well, it just doesn't hold together, does it? We need to know how these alternate realities get built in the mind.
Absolutely. So let's start big picture. Psychosis. Clinically, this is the term for a fundamental break from reality. And it generally shows up through three main symptom clusters. You've got delusions, you've got perceptual disturbances, that's hallucinations, and then there's something that can be really destabilizing, disorganized thinking.
Okay, tell us a bit more about that third one, disorganized thinking. Because we hear a lot about delusions and hallucinations, but that disorganization, that really sounds like the internal structure falling apart.
It's crucial, yeah, because it affects the way someone thinks, the very structure of their thoughts. It can show up in speech that just kind of wanders off track. We call that tangentiality, or maybe derailment, where someone jumps between completely unrelated topics. In really severe cases, it can become what used to be called word salad, where the grammar, the syntax, it just disintegrates. So for a character like, say, Sidney in your hypothetical, to maintain a coherent alternate reality where she's plotting something complex, she'd have to somehow contain that internal chaos, right? Projecting only the delusion and the hallucination outwards.
That makes sense. Yeah, the story needs a structure, even a delusional one.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's zoom in on the cognitive part, the engine driving the rules of this alternate reality. The delusion, the belief gone rogue.
Exactly. And rogue is a good word because rigidity is key here. A delusion is a belief that's fixed, it's false, and crucially, you cannot change it with rational arguments or evidence. And this part's important too. It can't just be explained by the person's cultural or religious background. If a whole community believes something extraordinary, that might be culture, not pathology. But if one person, totally separate from that context, believes, say, the FBI is tracking their every move with zero evidence, then that false belief really stems from their own distorted thinking.
That cultural checkpoint is really interesting. So if someone's community or their faith validates a belief clinically, that sort of protects it from being called a delusion, even if it sounds wild to an outsider.
Generally, yes, in a clinical setting. It shifts the focus. Is this individual pathology or is it shared social context? But, when we look at fictional narrative psychosis, often the character creates their own private culture of belief. They isolate themselves with this certainty that ends up being, toxic.
Okay, let's make this more concrete. How do these fixed false beliefs actually show up? Our sources mentioned a few classic types. First one, paranoid thinking.
Right. This is probably the most commonly depicted one. It's that irrational belief that you're being followed, tracked, targeted, plotted against. Intense suspicion, mistrust. The classic example is someone absolutely convinced the FBI is watching me, they've bugged my house. Even when there's absolutely no evidence, their conviction is total and it dictates how they live.
Okay. Then there's the idea of reference. This sounds a bit different. It's when, the outside world suddenly seems to be all about you.
Exactly. It's the conviction that some public event, maybe a news report, a song playing, graffiti on a wall, isn't just random. It's specifically talking to you or about you, sending you a message. Like, if you're watching the news and you suddenly think the anchor's tie color is a secret code telling you specifically to do something, that's an idea of reference. The universe is suddenly intensely personal, revolving around you.
Wow, okay. And the last big one in this cognitive category, the delusion of grandeur.
Yes, grandeur. This is the fixed belief that you have special powers or status or importance far beyond reality. The source example was pretty clear. Believing I am the smartest person alive, I should be president and king of the world. This kind of belief elevates the person,
Yeah.
right? It gives them this self-granted permission to act in extreme ways. You can see how that's a perfect building block for, say, a fictional killer who thinks they're above it all.
Definitely. Okay, so that's the belief side, the cognitive structures. Now, let's switch gears to the sensory core of the break. Hallucination, the false perceptions.
Right. So a hallucination is a sensory experience, seeing, hearing, smelling something that happens without any actual external stimulus. It's generated entirely by the mind. And it's really important to distinguish this from an illusion. An illusion is a misinterpretation of a real existing stimulus. Like, you see heat rising from a road, and your brain misinterprets it as a puddle of water. The road is real, the heat is real, the water isn't. A hallucination ends inside the mind. There's no external trigger being misinterpreted.
Got it. And these false perceptions can affect any sense, right?
That's right. Though the most common are auditory hallucinations, hearing voices. And these can vary massively. Could be friendly, could be neutral commentary on what you're doing,
Yeah.
which can be incredibly intrusive, hearing someone narrate your every move. But then there are the really dangerous ones. Command voices, telling the person to harm themselves or someone else.
And visual ones, seeing things that aren't there. We often think of shadows, but they can be much more detailed, can't they? Like the example of seeing someone inside a TV that's just showing static.
Exactly. They can be fully formed people, intricate scenes, or just simple things like flashing lights.